Hopefully it's not my last time speaking tonight. It'd be a phenomenal memorial to my family, though, if it were. You guys could all say, I remember when. That's a terrible segue into how I want to start tonight. However, let me just end the story right now by saying this. I'm here, so everything you're about to hear, just know that I made it and I'm okay. Okay? That's the important takeaway right now. Okay? I had knee surgery 11 days ago, on November 4th. And, I really didn't think twice about it, and I figured it was going to be a piece of cake. And it was. And, I really didn't think to ask additional questions on how my meds might be impacted. And I ended up taking a series of medications, both pre-op and anesthesia and otherwise, that conflicted with the cocktail I take on a regular basis. And so, just so you know, the entire talk's not going to be this depressing. I mean, I would look for an open window if I were me. That being said, I've been suicidal now for about 10 days on a daily basis, and but my recovery is what allows me to keep moving on. It's what allows me to pick up a microphone and talk to everybody here tonight. Because I can tell you, I was lying in bed about an hour and a half ago, giving up. I was done. And yesterday, I haven't slept in a couple days, and I went to Starbucks at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is just not recommended. It's never a good start to a day, 5 o'clock in the morning at Starbucks. And at 7:30, I come home and I go to get in the bed. I walk right past my wife and my kids and walk into my bedroom and just take off my clothes and get into bed, because I was like, I'm done with this day. We'll try again tomorrow. And she comes in, and my wife pats me on the back, tells me how much she loves me, tells me she's there for me, tells me to take a nap for like a half hour, get my ass out of bed, pull my shit together, and go to work. Because that's how it works in our house. Okay? And I share that with you because for me that's important, right? Because the ups and downs that I experience, if I reacted to every down I have, I would never get out of bed. I would never have succeeded with anything I do if I accepted the downs. And I'll tell you, the downs pass as quickly as the ups do. Right? No one tells you that. Good feelings pass quickly. You just don't realize it. Bad feelings you think stay forever. They pass at about the same rate. Right? And so if you're looking at a highway and you're watching the cars go under the overpass, each car could represent a different emotion that you experience. And they're all going past you. And so what I've learned is my job is just to let them pass through. Right? Don't hang up on any one of them. And when I'm not feeling well, so I can't read you a text my therapist sent me this morning, but it goes something like this. Feelings are not facts. And when your feelings are too out of control, or you can't process or regulate them properly, just slow down and wait until you can. And so I spend a lot of time this past 2 weeks waiting. And I'll tell you, it works, right? I'm here. Speaking to one of Leon's quotes, Leon puts on the board relapse, remission, and recovery. And he describes that as what, the recovery line, or I call that Monday. Right? Because if I'm not able to get through each of those states in one day, I'm not doing so good. And so what I've learned is, I have an inconsistent feeling of my outsides and my insides are inconsistent. Because Mary Ellen introduces me as the closer, and I do public speaking around the country, and I entertain. I used to be a comedian. I've stopped because I'm not that funny. And when I get introduced by people, I don't have that feeling, right? I should feel like $1 million right now. I'm going to go home and feel like $1. And it's the cheapest, dirtiest dollar you could think of, right? It's not like a good dollar. Like, it's probably a nickel, but I just want to make myself feel a little better, be reasonable right now. So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 1994, so I've been going on 22 years. I was misdiagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and they gave me stimulants as my first treatment plan for ADHD. And so if you have mania, you don't require stimulation at all. I grew up in New Jersey, so New Jersey is about 3 times the size of this room. They gave me stimulation, and I basically drove around the state 50,000 miles a year, 4 years in a row. And so if you're wondering what that's like, it's like saying hi to mom in the morning and kissing her goodnight while you see your entire family in between. And it's exhausting, right? However, I was doing it at about 100 miles an hour. And a therapist finally helped me understand what was going on in my brain. I process the world at 100 miles an hour. I interact with the world at 100 miles an hour. The world is only speaking at 10 miles an hour. So if you want to know what it feels like to talk to you guys, this is it. And when I'm not medicated, I've already not only finished your sentence, I've finished the entire conversation. I'll let you know the outcome. I'll see you tomorrow. Because I'm not going to wait around for you to catch up to what I've already thought about. I grew up in your typical 1980s household. I'm 39, so I was born in 77. My parents, by the typical 80s household, right? What does that represent? My parents got divorced. I was sent to therapy. My father then verbally and emotionally abused me because he only wanted to have one son. We weren't really the Cosbys. We were kind of like the house next to the Cosbys. Like, we were the people getting screamed at in the street when the door opened at the Cosby household. My father, who I am estranged from at this point, never understood what my illness was about. And when I told him of my diagnosis, probably 20 years into my diagnosis, his response to me was, had I known you had a problem, our relationship would have been better. And I said, and I'm gonna, my language is pretty clean tonight so far. We're gonna go a little south. I said to him, how are you gonna be less of an asshole because I have a diagnosis? That's impossible. You should be just kind and genuine because I'm your son, independent of my diagnosis. But unfortunately, what I learned from my father early on, I suffer from what some might consider to be the cool kind of bipolar disorder, right? I have bipolar type 1. I predominantly experience mania, right? So 80% of my interaction with the illness is manic, which people are like, man, I want that. No, you don't. It's terrible. But we'll talk about that in a minute. The 20% is the depressive side. But for me, my interactions with my father were so aggressive, and I had brain tendencies to be aggressive and to be manic, that I got stuck on this path of negative self-talk and self-hatred and contempt and this fear of failure that would blow you away if you were to experience, right? I wake up every day waiting for the world to end. And that's not a reality, right? It's almost like when I go through my accomplishments, I'm self-employed simply because no one would ever employ me. I at least wouldn't recommend that they do. But I have a significant sized business. I have 36 employees, right? I graduated from college after attending 4 of them, because the first 3 didn't understand my unique learning style. They also believed that I needed to drink less and not overdose on my medication. But because of some minor differences of opinion, I graduated from Rutgers University in New Jersey. My mother, I want to jump around a little bit, but my mother is a saint. But I'll tell you, for the parents that are here tonight, Like, it's like you want to be actively engaged in the recovery and the treatment plans of your children, and that is extremely admirable. There's like 5% you don't want to hear your kids ever say out loud. And so I had difficulty understanding what that 5% was, because I shared 100%. But I'll tell you, I'm now in a room full of strangers, and if I told my mother I didn't want to when I wake up, I don't want to live, that's a little too much sharing for me and for my mother, right? So I have friends and family. Leon and Mary Ellen are phenomenal non-parent parents, because they have that authoritarian type voice when you speak to them, but they know I'm not going to hurt myself, and they're able to react and respond appropriately. So the use of a support group is critical. But my mother, I called my mother up from college, and I said, "Ma, I need you to come pick me up." And she said, "Well, college is over in 6 weeks. I'll come get you." I said, "Well, I've been expelled from the university, and the police have moved me out of my dorm, so right now I'm homeless. So if you can come get me now, that's more the timeline I'm working on." And then I said to her, "Listen, I'm not prepared to talk about anything that's happened. So just don't ask questions. Trust me. Trust me. We're gonna get through this together by you knowing a little less." And she respected that. And we drove 2 hours in silence from SUNY Binghamton back to New Jersey. And I went to bed that night in my high school bedroom. And when I woke up the next morning, my mother came to me and said, "Listen, you don't have to go back to college today." I was like, "Well, I'm glad your expectations are so low." I was thinking maybe like on Friday I'll go. But she said, "However, you're not going to stay here and do nothing. So get up, get yourself a job, do something. You have to move." And so something that was kind of ingrained in me from early childhood, you're not ever allowed to decide how you feel from the comfort of your own bed, right? And so that's actually helped me manage my illness today, because today I still wake up, I shower, I habitually leave my house. Sometimes I come back to start the day over. That's fine, right? I don't judge. But she would say, "You don't get to decide how you feel from the comfort of your own bed. Take a shower, I'll meet you downstairs." I'm like, "Well, this is the least supportive mother you could have. She's not listening to me." And I'm like, "Fine, I'll go downstairs." And so I started eating breakfast, and I said, "I still don't feel well, I'm not going to school." She says, "Okay, when you get home from school." My mother was not deaf, but she had selective hearing, right? You think your kids have selective hearing. My mother knew the direction, and she was going to get there. And she said, "If you don't feel well when you get home from school, you do your homework, you eat dinner, you go right to bed. And we start over tomorrow." I'm like, this is terrible parenting. I mean, we should have more compassion for me. So to this day, I wake up, and I'll talk about an app that I built, but I believe you have to wake up every day and start your day. Because I'll tell you, I've never felt good from the comfort of my own bed. I always feel like a few more minutes and I'll feel good. So today I get up, I take a shower, I have a very ritualistic breakfast, and I go. Last year I went through another crisis, and I'll tell you about this year's crisis. I actually find that joke much better. I go to Leo's. I eat at Leo's in Bloomfield Hills on Maple and Telegraph, 7 a.m. if anyone's interested. And I'm sitting on the phone and I'm talking to a buddy of mine who I speak to every day. And I'm just welling up, I'm tearing, right? Because when you feel like I feel these days, you tear because you don't know what else to do. And I'm crying, and he says, I admire you, because you're out, right? You're starting your day, you're going. He's like, is there anything I can do for you? And in just a split second, I'm like, next person that makes eye contact with me here, I'm gonna tell them the eggs are lousy. And it just clicked, right? It just gave me enough movement to start continuing. Now, I had to reset that day, but you keep moving forward. Last year, I was crying hysterical because this year, the meds got flushed. Last year, the pharmacy sent me the wrong medication, the wrong dosage. And so instead of taking 300, I was taking 150, and I'm not stable at that level. And so I'm taking half my medication, and all of a sudden the wheels are coming off the bus, and I'm driving to a client and I'm crying, and I call my business partner, because when things aren't going right for me, I have steps in place, right? I know who to reach out to. And so for me, it's not always about running under my own power to get to the finish line. Sometimes I'm very comfortable having people push me and drag me to the finish line, right? Fortunately, every day finishes, so you just got to get there, right? Today's going to be over soon. I just got to get that far. And so I'm talking to my partner. He's like, "Why don't you take a week off?" And this is where my partner's extremely supportive of me, but maybe not understanding the mental illness entirely. I'm like, "Well, I'm not interested in living right now. I don't feel the best place to be is alone in my room with my thoughts, thinking about when I should come back to work." I'm like, I feel like that's a riskier proposition, so I'm gonna go on the sales call. And they said, so I get there, he's like, "Well, what do you," and he's just trying to be conversational. He's like, "Well, are you gonna cry in the sales call?" I'm like, if that's what they're buying, that's what I'm selling. And so I go to the sales call, I pull it together, I sell something because that's what I'm really good at doing. And I then leave and I cry on my way to lunch, and I meet him for lunch. But I set up a plan. Every hour I meet somebody, right? Every hour and a half, I have a plan in place and a team full of people to call. My last hospitalization was on my birthday of 2009. I was on the phone with my therapist and I overdosed on my benzos, of which I'm now no longer allowed to take benzos, so don't overdose on them frequently. I'm not allowed to take anything that's as needed, because if one's good, 10's phenomenal, and 100's the solution. And I don't know, I mean, if anyone's ever tried to eat donuts or chips, right? You eat one, it's like, man, this is pretty good. Let's get another one going. Well, if one pill's supposed to slow you down, 10 should stop you. And so for me, the biggest problem with my illness is that racing thought of either I'm not accomplishing enough, or I'm accomplishing too much, or I'm gonna be a failure, or whatever it is. You just want the noise to stop. So I was hospitalized, and I was in the hospital for 5 days, and they let me out because I know how to answer questions really well. And I got home and I walked to my bedroom and I was like, holy shit, there are no rules here. And so I got back in the car and they put me back into the hospital because I knew how to answer questions really well on the way back. But part of my illness, I deal with a lot of paranoia and losing touch with reality. Not losing touch with reality in a psychotic episode kind of way. Losing touch with reality, thinking that things are going to fall apart, right? I had a client, and that client fired me. Just as a background here, because I practice as much humility as possible, I've been fired by every client I've ever had. I find that's actually a good working relationship with a client when they fire you. If they bring you back, it's just, shows how good you are. But I've been fired by lots of people, and I used to think it's over. I still feel that way. And I would literally wake up and think to myself, I met Kate, my wife, at a Tim Hortons on Woodward, and I'm crying. So by the way, I don't cry this much. It just happens to be the mood I'm in to tell you these stories tonight. If I was in a better mood, we'd be talking about hot dogs. But anyway, I get to Tim Hortons and I'm crying, and I said, babe, I don't know if I can get a job at McDonald's. I don't know if I can support the family. She's like, are you closing your company? I'm like, no. She's like, why are you gonna work at McDonald's? I was like, well, what if my company fails and goes under? She's like, it's not going to. And it never has. I've grown 30% a year, every year for 8 years in a row, right? And one day, when I probably had like 20 employees, I woke up and like it hit me straight on. It was like, there's 19 other people that are gonna be far more disappointed than I am before I get fired. right? Because I got a lot of people here. This doesn't just happen overnight. It's almost like I've now built enough that it takes a long time to unravel everything around me, but I don't have that inner feeling, that inner self-worth. I want to talk about something controversial, because and it's not controversial because I really don't have an opinion either way, and I don't judge anyone's opinion. But I actually want to thank the current election cycle for bringing mental illness to the forefront of the country. Okay? When I used to talk, I used to give an example. If you want to know what it's like to have mental illness, this is what it's like. Watch the Lions on Sunday. Okay? And you watch the Lions, and they're losing, right? Because that's a traditional position, and they need to come back. And it's now 3 seconds left, and the ball is thrown into the end zone. And so what happens? In this story, the ball is caught. What happens to the entire stance? Yes, a touchdown, right? Everyone jumps out of their seats. Well, if you want to know what mania is like, picture this for another 2 weeks. It doesn't go away. I can't explain it. It's the same with depression. It's like, shit, they dropped it. Everyone else bounces back, but I don't, right? That's the problem with mental illness, right? The election's fantastic, because no matter what the results are, people are like, holy shit, or, oh. Either way, you guys now get to experience what I live on a daily basis, right? What do you guys have to do? You better start working on self-care, right? You guys aren't fortunate as I am. I'm medicated. You guys aren't. So let me ask you a question. Who in this room is really screwed? You guys. So that being said, I'll explain maybe one or two more things. The concept of medication, just so everyone understands, medication is there to set guidelines, right? An upper and a lower boundary. It's not there to fix things, right? So if my upper is a positive 10 and my lower is a negative 10, the meds are supposed to keep you within the guidelines. Where do my rails go to? Sometimes positive 80, sometimes negative 30. Right? Your loved ones, you've probably seen it 80 and negative 30. The meds are supposed to bring you into some reasonable realm. Well, let me tell you something. You want to know what negative 8 feels like? Feels like shit, right? But it doesn't mean the meds aren't working, right? So you could feel lousy on medication and still have to focus on self-care and doing all the things that Leon and Mary Ellen have taught during this program. All of those things. The meds are there to move you forward. The other coping mechanisms, the DBT, the CBT, mindfulness, 12-step recovery if you deal with addiction, which I do. Those other tools are there to help you move forward. If I may offer my quick plug.
Sure.
So I built a tool. So in 2015, aside from losing my medication, I took 6 months to recover from that outage. During that 6 months, my company grew 30%. I found an investor that invested in my speaking business, which is now a new and growing enterprise. And I built an app. And I built an app which I call a plan for living. And I have business cards if anyone's interested. And I created what I call the happiness formula. And so what I've learned is gratitude plus spirituality plus mindfulness creates awareness. Awareness is what creates happiness, right? So here's what I know about everybody in this room, medicated or not, diagnosed or not, we've all got problems, right? And you know how I know you're all capable of managing and living a better, more mindful life? Because I want to know how many people during my presentation have thought about their problems. If you can please don't raise your hand. Thank you. So, barring the Lions being your problem, most of you have not been thinking about your mortgage, right? Most of you have not been thinking about your day-to-day worries. right? What if I was able to show you that you could take this little microcosm of an event and turn it into your entire life, right? It's what keeps me going, right? I created a gratitude list at 3:30 in the morning. Why? Because my gratitudes can't be taken away. My marriage, my wife, my healthy kids, all of these things. And when I rewire my brain to see these things, I feel better, right? No one ever told me my gratitudes can't be taken away. What I could tell you is when I was first told to create a gratitude list, the first item on my list was, thank God this list is done, right? Because that's how much I believed in it. You know, the second step was a spirituality component, where just reaching out and not taking on the burdens of the world. It's not for me to fix. I'm just hoping the world will get better. And if you're unsure of how this works, most people have gotten on a scale. And before you get on a scale, sometimes your facial expression might look like this. And then you look down and you're like, oh, what happened? Well, you want to know what happened? The last 3 weeks worth of dinner happened, right? Don't be surprised. But you asked for help. You could ask for help for all those things, your loved ones, your own diagnosis. And once you start turning this over, you change your perspective on how you interact with the world, right? Because I'll tell you something, if I change the dialogue of tonight to be, and I don't tell you how I'm feeling, is the guy that's talking to you right now wanting to die today? No, that's not that guy, right? I'm not that guy, but I am, right? But I can learn how to work through that and find strength and hope and know that life is worth living. My meds have failed, my doctors have failed, my businesses have failed, my father has abused me and failed in that regard. Right? I've been divorced. I've lost 155 pounds. I've gained 155 pounds. I've been expelled from college. It's not going to keep me from being happy today. Right? Happiness is a choice. It cannot be taken away. Your happiness can never be taken away. It can be given away. And so the next time you're miserable or angry or frustrated, just ask yourself one question. Who did you give it away to? Because that's on you. That being said, I can literally go on forever. I have a website. I have YouTube videos on my talks, on my app. I'd be glad to answer questions. And thank you very much for having me tonight.